Now, there's two very important pieces of information in respects to designing for fear. Firstly, you can use phobias to tailor terrifying experiences for those who suffer from those phobias. Hell, even if they don't, designing a game around a core central theme that is in and of itself rooted in fear is a spawning ground for ideas that are truly scary. The second piece of information gleaned about designing horror is that people have a healthy fear of the unknown. If you make good, careful decisions with audio cues, level design, and subtly build suspense, you can effectively make the player essentially scare themselves, which is exactly what I did in that situation. Now, I briefly mentioned how having a strong theme to tie your creative processes to will promote clever, synchronized ideas. If you take any advice from this video, it should be this. By placing limitations on your project, you effectively increase your creative capacity. You're able to focus and deeply explore a project that has restraints and parameters to behave in, as opposed to having free reign with no clear direction. Now, in the games we've talked about so far, or the games that I've talked about so far, the fear is only ever really temporary. I mean, eventually you die so many times that you just aren't scared anymore. You're foaming at the mouth with rage, or you've beaten the game and you're on a subsequent playthrough, and everything that was scary the first time around you are expecting. You know where all the jump scares are gonna be. But I think that the real reason why these games lose their fear is because eventually, at some point, you are nothing more than an arsenal with fucking legs. I mean, you have souped up weapons or abilities and powers, and you're just unstoppable. There's nothing left for you to fear. In fact, everything else should be fearing you at this point. On the other side of the coin, there are games where you don't become a wrecking ball with weapons for arms, or special abilities and superpowers. In fact, you don't get a weapon at all in some of these titles. That one I played recently that comes to mind that's like this is Outlast. Now in this game, you don't get anything to keep you alive, not even something to heal yourself with. You get a camera that you're using to document things that you can turn night vision on and see in the dark, and you can hide under beds. That's it. So anything that's coming out thrashing after you, your best bet is to just run. Now Outlast is actually one of my more favorite horror titles I played. If you haven't checked that one out, I highly recommend it. It's not super long. I mean, it can be when you get freaked out and you don't want to progress the story any further and you're just kind of inching along slowly, afraid at every single noise. And this game will do that to you. Like I said, you get nothing to defend yourself with, so you're not really hurtling through walls, breaking down doors. You're just kind of hiding under beds and waiting. So let's go ahead and talk about that one real quick. This one's going to be fun. You are a freelance investigative journalist who received a tip about some strange shit going on at Mount Massive Asylum, located in Lake County, Colorado. Missing humans, strange experiments gone wrong, or successful if you were aiming for fucking people up and bringing about hell on earth. You know, you do you, man. Anyway, you are in there to blow the whistle on the sick people who run this operation and put an end to the torment and hell that Mount Massive Asylum dispenses. Using shadows and crouching behind objects, you make your way through the halls and rooms of this asylum. But before long, you're in over your head and realize there's some supernatural shit going down. And it's all about that kill you horribly life. You will have to solve puzzles in some areas, not ridiculous statue-related ones with wildly over-the-top complexity. There are various locales you'll rendezvous aside from the asylum itself, including sewers, underground tunnels, and a high-tech research facility deep under some icy mountains. Most of your adversaries are lunatics who have been tortured and experimented on, turning them into bloodlusting psychopaths. And of those, most of them are butts out, balls dangling naked. They don't care. They're crazy, man. But there are bigger, more sinister things lurking, including the twins, who are also naked and want your tongue and liver for, well, to eat. Strong Fat, a recurring giant of humanoid thing who will crush your skull or straight up rip your fucking heart out, Kano style. Finish him. And the most disturbing is the doctor who ensures you'll remember him for the rest of the game. And probably your life. And of course the main antagonist, the Wall Rider. No spoilers here, but it's a really cool and relatively unique story. Definitely worth killing the lights and playing, especially for October. These are realistic games that have great audio and gritty detail. The graphics parallel real-life people and, in doing so, help to facilitate emotional investments in the characters therein. However, hyperrealism and top-notch production are by no means a prerequisite for horror games to achieve that level of attachment. More importantly, they are not mandatory elements to foster fear and raise the adrenaline and stress of the player. Game designers can instill dread and terror using creative aesthetics. Even simple or crude 8-bit art will do. Also, using suspenseful and interesting narrative devices. Recently, I've played Uncanny Valley, a game that lends credence to what I've said. Uncanny Valley is a term that we use to describe an object's likeness or resemblance to a human being. Most commonly, that object is a robot. Also worth noting, Uncanny Valley is generally used to describe when it's so parallel to resembling one of us that it's creepy, or at least fairly uncomfortable. A great premise for a creepy game, don't you think? The team at Cowardly Creations thought so too, because their game visits that theme. You play as Tom, a man with a past that must have been fairly shady, as he's moved to a remote location to start anew. You've taken a job as a security guard at an isolated facility that has been, well, it's had some incidents that have resulted in essentially closing down. You work the night shift, alone, and each night you will explore the 4 floors of the main facility, as well as the basement. You also appear to have some narcolepsy because if you don't return home to your apartment at the end of your shift, you'll pass out, wherever you're standing. During the sleep, you have nightmares, or catch a glimpse into Tom's past. Weird shit happens during these segments, and you're generally abruptly woken once it's peaked with fear. There are a ton of variables that change the story, narrative, and even the gameplay. I've played through it 3 times now, and they were drastically different experiences, but one constant in them all was good old school horror. Some of the imagery can be intense, and the encounters can be pretty manic. Doubly so if you've been injured by one of them and lose precious mobility. I've been through at least 3 locations outside of the main storyline, and I've seen that there are others that my actions and decisions have not brought me to yet, granting replayability to this title, so it's certainly worth the nominal price. The team did an amazing job taking horror gaming back to its roots, particularly with the aesthetics, which lends a sense of nostalgia to the game. Uncanny Valley is a unique experience, and it's the perfect time to sink into it with Halloween just around the corner. The final franchise I want to talk about is probably my favorite, because aside from being a top-tier horror contender, it's the most brutal and gruesome experience you could ask for, which makes it metal as fuck, and those who know me know that I love me the metal. Enter Dead Space. One of the most appealing elements of Dead Space is how it takes everything you've learned from other shooter-style games and turns it belly up. All of it. In shooters, we train our reflexes to rapidly take aim to enemies in the head, or at least in the heart. But headshots and torso damage will bear little to no fruit in Dead Space. The grotesque, twisted enemies you face in this franchise give absolutely no fucks about headshots, or heads. The head will splatter or fall from the body, and these things will not even break stride. If anything, they just rush you with bladed tentacle things flailing wildly like a crazed muppet hell-bent on dismembering you violently. Kind of like a Floridian stricken with road rage. Let's cut into this one and get our hands bloody.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high.
Dead Space takes you out of your world and puts you in deep, dark space where you'll traverse the vast, planet-cracking ship, the Ishimura, the Sprawl, through the vacuum of space, alien planets, and a few other dangerous locations. You play as Isaac Clarke, an engineer and all-around average guy in every way, an unassuming hero to say the least. During a mining excavation on a planet during a routine planet cracking, an extraterrestrial icon is unearthed. These things are referred to as markers. They're double helixed in shape and bear strange insignia all along their surface. Markers emit an electromagnetic signal that triggers sentient life to create more markers, and they also reanimate necrotic tissue. The signal also triggers violent and eventually homicidal behavior, so that once sentient beings have destroyed each other, a marker can then twist, contort, and reanimate the corpse into necromorphs. These things are resilient, fast, and beyond deadly. Limbs split off into long, flexible, prehensile spears. They also come in an assortment of flavors, and none of them are any easier to kill.
It's happening again. Everyone's dying around me.
We're the only hope of saving our entire race. There is no hope, Isaac. It is do or die. We're stuck without your help. Are you with me? Are you with me?
They're here.
Speaking of destroying them,
Which means they're
well,
everywhere.
that's where it gets interesting.
For everyone.
Forget the head and torso. These things have no vital organs in there. And, you know, they're already dead. The only way to keep them down is to dismember them, blasting off arms to lessen their ability to attack or cutting off their legs to slow them down. Eventually, after removing enough limbs and draining them of blood, they'll be dead again. Traditional weaponry won't really suffice in this manner. Luckily, you will have access to very non-traditional weapons. In fact, they weren't intended to be weapons at all. Most of your firepower comes from repurposed mining equipment. Each tool has a purpose, both in mining applications and necromorph shredding. This is one of the coolest aspects of this series. Each weapon is unique and versatile and features alternate firing modes. You also get this badass suit, referred to as a rig, that features vital display, oxygen support, and thrusters for when you need to go out into space. A telekinesis module great for using dismembered limbs as projectiles and for solving puzzles, and a stasis ray. This thing slows down anything in its area of effect. All of these things in each weapon can be upgraded and modified. Dead Space spans across 3 main installments, and also 2 smaller scale games. Extraction, which is a sort of prequel, and it also changes the pace up a bit, as this title is a rail shooter. The second one was called Ignition, and again an entirely different direction, as this one is a puzzler. Point is, there's a lot of substance in this franchise, and the lore is vast, with a detailed universe rich with character, story, and plenty of scares. that's all of my time I'm going to take up. In short, there are a plethora of tools at a designer's disposal to devise horrific experiences and make the player's skin crawl almost as fast as their hearts burst from their chest. These were just a glimpse into the horror games that are worth playing. I mean, there's an array of great titles, and some of them are available in the Shocktober sale on the marketplace now. I mean, they're pretty much giving those things away. I picked up 7 or 8 of them. Easy. Let me know what some of your favorite horror games have been, and let us know what frightening experiences you've had in those comments. Be safe out there, and maybe, if you're lucky, you'll get some of those elusive candies with the free drugs in them. I've been trying to score some of that shit all my life. Alright, thanks for watching, and have a good Halloween, folks. Okay, bye!